how do you deal with security bots opening and clicking emails? I know, for instance, HubSpot has like a little like open rate calculator, like how much the open rate with bots and minus bots. I have no idea the logic behind how they do that, but it seems to be something that's happening more. And I imagine it's only going to become a bigger part of every email marketer's thinking and headspace is bots reading emails and stuff for them. So how do you deal with this issue?
Yeah, well, that's why we don't track opens and clicks, because it's going to happen no matter what, right? If you're sending to an enterprise that uses spam filters, it's going to show up. And there's so many different ways bots can show up on clicks and opens, which is why we don't track it and why I don't think it's a good indicator anymore of deliverability or the quality of your campaign. And that's why we switch completely to replies. Positive replies is the only metric that we actually track. And we also track reply to opportunity.
I would say a lot of the platforms now are trying to address this. Like they're trying to have their own little algorithms to pick up IP addresses or different like bots that are out there. I would say in addition to that, just look for any kind of trends. I like to go into my database and see if someone is opening every single email, but they're never clicking through, never responding, and their email address looks a little funky. Usually that is some kind of like honeypot or a security bot. So just look for unusual behavior like that.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Let's do a quick mic check. Can you chat in and let me know you can hear me? And you don't count because you're backstage. Sorry. All right, Nathan, JR, thank you. Thank you. As we always do, kind of an icebreaker just to get to know our audience a little bit. Chat in, let us know where you're joining from today. So let's do where you're joining from today and what the weather is like, because I feel like this time of year across the world, but especially across the US and Canada, weather is very, very different. So I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm looking at my watch as if I have the temperature. I don't. It does not have that capability, but it's probably about 80 degrees. I just went for a walk. It's sunny. It's probably going to get to about 95 today. And I see people joining. Let's look. We got Cincinnati, Massachusetts. Sounds like it's good in Boston right now. We always have a ton of people coming in from Boston. That's exciting. It's raining in Ann Arbor. Nashville can't decide if it wants to rain or not. I've been there. I know that climate. Aaron joining from St. Petersburg, Florida. Cloudy day in Florida. Okay. Allison's in Asheville. We were just talking about that. Sunny at 72 is perfect. So far you're winning, Allison. It's ungodly hot in Dallas. I heard it's really hot in Austin as well today. We were just talking about that backstage. And everybody's joining. This is great. I don't want to kill too much time because a lot of people are joining, and I have two awesome experts here on email deliverability that I want to invite up to the main stage. So let me add Alex and Sarah. Sarah, Alex, thank you so much for joining today. Let's do some intros. You're hearing from some of our audience members here. We have, what do we have? 178 people live so far. That's great and growing. But Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and how much of an email deliverability nerd are you?
I'm an email marketing nerd too, so that works. So I'm currently the RevOps and GTM strategy lead at Vector, a MarTech company. But previously actually started in email marketing within marketing operations. So really kind of cut my teeth there. That was my intro to marketing operations, and then continued to move upwards to more and more strategic engagements. But email continues to be a really important part of everything that we do. It's one of the highest performing, highest ROI channels, whether you're in sales or marketing or customer success, all across the RevOps org. So yeah, I've seen it all. I have a few stories to share too if we have the time. that
Yeah,
are amusing.
Yeah, I bet.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here, Sarah. Thanks for being part of this. All right, Alex, where are you from, background, and how much of a email deliverability nerd are you?
So I am from Atlanta, Georgia, but I am currently in Austin for SaaS Stock. And yeah, I own and operate an agency called Understory. So we help SaaS companies scale via email, GTM engineering, and paid media. I would say I live and breathe this stuff. It's a massive component of our business. And if we don't deliver for our clients, typically it's only because of deliverability. So it's become a core focus for us. And it's something that I focus very heavily on myself still.
And Alex, in talking with Alex and Sarah briefly before we started today's session, sounds like, Alex, you have a little bit more experience on the outbound and signal-based email, which obviously is a little bit different than sort of organic or opted-in email lists like newsletters, right?
Yeah, exactly. So outbound tactics, signal-based, trigger-based, could be inbound things that lead to outbound activity. But yeah, primarily that versus newsletters and things like that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. One housekeeping item or two, maybe I'll invent a third, but at least two housekeeping items before we get going here with some questions. First of all, we are recording today's session. You will get the session after. Please join though, because today's session is intended, as all of ours are, to help you with your questions, right? So we're going to spend a lot of time here answering questions. I have a few that I have to ask Sarah and Alex to kick us off, but please join. And also please use the Q&A panel to ask your questions. It just makes it a little easier. I can go in there and I can do this cool fancy thing where I click show on screen, which I've never done before. I'll be honest. The thing I'm most nervous about today, Sarah and Alex, is making sure I appropriately add the poll question, because it looks amazing on the screen. We can see it and who asked it, and we can talk about it and answer it. I'm hoping I can execute that well. But I really want to hear from everybody. Sarah and Alex have been gracious enough to dedicate the next 60 minutes to answering your questions on email deliverability. So if you have a question, head over to the Q&A panel, drop it there, and we will hopefully get to all of them, depending on how many questions there are. But before we do that, I have a few questions that I want to ask. Sarah, I think we can start with you, kind of a broader question, but most teams blame low open rates on subject lines. We optimize, we A/B test, right? We spend so much time thinking about the subject line and how that's going to impact our open rate. But when should marketers suspect it's actually a deliverability issues when they feel like their open rate is declining or is too low?
So the great news on this is that a lot of tools, this has gotten a lot easier over time. It used to be that you'd have to manually be going through all the stats for every email to try to figure out like, okay, what's going on here. Now, if you have a tool like HubSpot, they actually have a performance and they call it an email health pane that you can go to. So I highly recommend see if your platform has that out of the box. That'll tell you like, hey, how are things going? Usually they'll rate you against kind of like the benchmark in your area.
Yeah.
So that's a good first place to start. But I think a huge mistake is to look at like subject lines and open rates and click-through rates rather than unsubscribe rate is a huge one. And if in a perfect world, if you can get an unsubscribe like reason form on the website, that's awesome, because then you can see where there might be misalignment and why people might be unsubscribing. And then the other piece is the bounce rate. If you see that a lot of people are bouncing, go in and see. Usually the email service provider will send you a reason and use that to help determine what's going on there. And it might be something as simple as you have a misconfiguration on a technical basis, or it could be that your emails are flagging spam for some reason.
So Alex, I want to kick it over to you, but before I do, I want to actually ask the audience, could you chat in and let us know what email platform you're using? I think that would help. So Sarah obviously referenced HubSpot. That's what we use. I imagine it's going to be the majority of the people that answer. It's been straight HubSpots, couple Marketos, Intercom, Pipedrive. Wow, a lot of trying to keep up Outreach, Pardot. Okay, just helps us, I think, contextualize the conversation a little bit to answer your question. So a lot of HubSpot, I see some Pipedrive, a lot of Marketo is probably the second most popular here. Alex, let's kick it over to you. So let me go back to the question. So the question was, when teams blame their low open rate on subject lines, Sarah was talking a little bit about how obviously that's not the only indicator of open rates of low deliverability. But when should marketers really suspect that a deliverability issue might be at play?
So I'm going to throw a curveball in here, but we don't even track opens or clicks. We only track replies and positive replies. So for us, a good indicator in whether or not you're delivering in the primary inbox is if you found a tactic or an angle that works really well for you, and all of a sudden you see you went from a 7-8% reply rate down to 5, down to 3, down to 1, down to 0.5. It's a pretty good indicator that you're not landing in the primary inbox anymore. There is a chance that you're going through copy fatigue as well. And it could be a copy related issue that Clay just made a post about this, but GTM alpha, basically, where the tactic that you are using is no longer working, but it's also a really good indicator that you're just no longer delivering in the primary inbox. And tying that back to subject lines, something that we do for all of our clients is we mix up the subject line for every single email that we send. So they're always a blend of, a couple different variations. So we might have 4 different variations that basically say the same thing, but they're all formatted differently and personalized uniquely. And what that does is it helps you also just get past spam filters. And spam filters are a massive component of pretty much every enterprise company that you want to sell into these days. So if you can't get past that, there's a good chance you're also going to start landing in spam.
Okay. Alex, for the reply rate, so let me ask you, Alex, what tools are you primarily using for email? A lot of it is outbound and signal based, but what are those tools that you're primarily using?
To be honest, we've migrated all of our clients to Instantly, and we've seen a lot of success with it. The reason we use Instantly in particular is because they also have a much better warm-up pool than a lot of the other email warm-up tools that exist, and that's something everyone should be doing with their inboxes as well. But they isolate basically spam inboxes from the warm-up pool, so those don't exist, and those are the ones that can harm deliverability pretty quickly. So you're in a pool of real senders and real companies that are actually doing quality work versus, you know, a spam cannon that might be sending 1 million emails a day for an info product or something like that.
Yep. Okay. Sarah, on the opted in newsletter side, right? So people that you're have opted into your list, reply rates. So I know in terms of we're talking about warming up, you know, domain, keeping a good sender score essentially. And I don't know if I'm using that term right anymore, but replies actually do matter. How do you think about reply rate? And is that a metric that you're using when it comes to deliverability?
So this is an interesting question because I feel like replies are often neglected on the marketing side, and sales are ultra important, but I think they aren't taken advantage enough in marketing. Like often, I try really hard to discourage any clients from using a no reply email address because then you can't see if someone's replying, and like the whole point is to start a conversation. So I would recommend that, and then in terms of replies, I think that try to get a tool like back in the day, it used to be SiftRock, where you can actually see the replies coming in and manage them. Because I think it's important to not neglect it because those are your most engaged people. So you should have someone reply to them.
Okay. All right. I want to try our first Q&A. This is the big moment of truth. Can I actually get it up on the screen? I'll just read it to you. I think I unsuccessfully. Oh wait, no, pinned to screen. Hold on. There we go. Yes, I made it happen. All right, this is from Aaron. I think this is probably more a question for Sarah, but Alex, feel free to chime in too if this is one that you feel like you could help answer. How have you seen email performance deliverability vary by platform? So we started talking about HubSpot, we talked about Marketo, we talked about SiftRock, a couple other things. For instance, I feel like I saw a slight improvement switching from HubSpot to Pardot, but I prefer HubSpot in every other way, and I don't have enough data to confirm the difference was platform related. So I feel like this one is super right up your alley. Do you have a good answer here for Aaron?
Yes. So I would look into the back end of how your server is managed for each platform. So if you're in the Salesforce ecosystem, you tend to be managed across all marketing products for Salesforce. So that can be good or bad, kind of like Alex talked about earlier. The pro of Instantly is that they take out anyone who has poor deliverability out of that pool. So the marketing tools, they aren't quite as progressive in that space. What they do offer though is you can buy a dedicated IP address, which I would highly recommend you do, because then you can control your own destiny. So I would actually, like, I saw the comment about switching from HubSpot to Pardot, and I would look into, like, did you buy a dedicated IP address with Pardot? Because that might actually be why you're seeing better deliverability. It might not be the tool itself, and that's most likely the case.
So there was another question. Actually, I don't think someone chatted this in, but I was reading your guide and I had a question. When do you buy a dedicated IP? How many emails are you sending? I think usually the measurement is per month, is about how most people would measure it. When do you think is the right tier of how many emails per month you have to send basically to be at a point where you're ready for a dedicated IP address?
That's a great question. I prefer to have it regardless, to be honest with you. Like I don't like to share with others just because then if they get on a bunch of blacklists, for example, then that could impact my deliverability and I have zero control over it. So I don't really see it so much as like the amount of emails as how important is it that we land in the inbox?
Yeah.
Like how strategic are we about email? How invested are we in it? And if you're invested in it, I would invest in the IP address.
And then I guess the natural follow-up question there would be like, so how do you, not everyone may be able to afford it. I think I understand the investment argument. Like, hey, if you're really going to do this right. I don't know. I remember last time I bought a dedicated IP. I forget exactly how much more, but it was, it was a significant amount of money more. It wasn't nothing. Um, if you can't afford it and you're evaluating platforms, how do you evaluate platforms for their deliverability? Like, will they tell you? Do they give you a benchmark of their deliverability? Is that something that, like, in the sales process you should be able to identify?
You can ask them. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Could I chime in?
Yeah, please.
Like on the last question too. So when it comes to dedicated IP, Mike put a comment in here. IP isn't as important as it used to be. It's a double-edged sword. If you screw up, you're in trouble. I echo that sentiment. So it is a good thing to diversify because, like you said, if you have all your eggs in one basket and that basket falls apart, then all your eggs are going to fall out of that basket. So it's good to have a handful of different eggs in multiple different baskets, which is why I actually don't subscribe to having your own IP address, because if anything goes wrong, you can end up in a lot of trouble. Now, a lot of these sequencing tools these days, they'll rotate IPs and they'll put your inboxes in and out of multiple different IPs. A lot of them rotate on a biweekly basis or something like that, which can substantially help with deliverability. That's what I would personally recommend today, is using a tool that rotates IPs and also one that keeps out spammers.
Awesome. All right, Alex. Thanks for chiming in. I actually have a question. I hope I didn't lose it, but I do have a question teed up for you, more on the sales side. Let me answer and add it to our screen. This is from Cam. So the question for you, Alex, is when does sales actually, Sarah, you might be able to answer this one too. When sales doesn't care to improve their data hygiene, how can I incentivize them to remove duplicates? Sales claims they need duplicates for multiple location businesses. So I don't know if I understand that use case specifically, but Alex and Sarah, as a marketing ops person, you probably had experience here. Incentivizing the sales team to keep their data hygiene clean. It's like updating their CRM. It's hard, right? The incentivizing have either of you had some experience here successfully getting the sales team to update and keep their data clean?
We do it as one of our services for our agency. So yeah, we've
Okay.
definitely seen, I mean, we use Clay and we do a lot of deduping and data hygiene projects to clean up people's Salesforce and HubSpot. So have we seen other teams do it themselves? Occasionally, but usually they just come to us and we do it for them because it's a nightmare of a process if you don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it depends upon your sales kind of culture as well. Like I've had some clients where sales leadership is like, hey, I'm having SDRs like spend all this time getting this data. And so that if they don't enter it into Salesforce, then I'm losing money. And so they will put it into their like kind of not right into the compensation structure, but into like their performance structure. If you are not filling in the data as you get it, then we're losing money. And so you're not going to be viewed as good as others.
Just a reminder to everyone, I know there's a chat panel and then there's also the Q&A panel. To the best of your ability, you can add to the Q&A panel. It just makes it easier for me to pull up your question and sort through it and keep up all the questions. We have a lot that have come through. I'm trying to see which one do we want to do next. We talked about reply rates already. Let's do this one right here. It's from Barb. Let me put it on screen. Does this discussion apply only to large emailers, or do some things also apply to 1Z, 2Z mailing solopreneurs? I'm not quite sure what that part means, but I think it's smaller businesses that have a smaller email list. Sarah and Alex, does your advice apply to a certain threshold of business size, or does it apply across the board?
I would say it always applies, but it really applies more during automation. So if you're sending manual emails 1 or 2 at a time, you really don't have much to worry about, to be honest with you. Unless you're sending total spam in those 1 or 2 emails, then you should be completely fine. And honestly, your deliverability is going to be best if you're sending those manual emails 1 or 2 at a time.
And those manuals be coming from your Gmail account, your cold prospecting,
Exactly.
or your outreaching. Yep.
Yeah, they could be coming from anywhere.
Yep. Whereas another tool, Outreach, a HubSpot, Pardot, those are all
Exactly.
automated systems. Yeah.
It really gets tricky when you start adding automation. That's really where it gets tricky. If you're sending manual emails, business as usual, keep doing what you're doing. And honestly, you're going to see the best results from doing manual outreach.
Yeah. Sarah, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would say the one thing I would add is that email service providers are sensitive. So like, for example, way back in the day, when I was working at an agency, we had someone approach wanting to be a customer. They're like, we need you to fix our IP sending reputation. And what they had done was they had abused each IP address and they kept trying to switch it out. But the problem is that the email service provider is smart enough to know that that's that same business that's trying to buy the new domain and the new IP address, all stuff. So they would auto flag them, which to me is wild. But they would just be able to see, who owns this domain. Oh, it's the same person or the same business. And then they're like, this is an abuser. So I don't say that to raise an alarm, but to give an example of, I try to be thoughtful whenever I can, because that's my reputation and I don't want to start flagging myself. It's like, is it really worth it to just send some stuff that's kind of like spammy? I'd rather just be thoughtful across the board if I can.
For sure. Okay. Let me go to the next question because I think I got a good one here.
Dan, I think you have the hardest job of all of us, to be honest.
do either of you know how to juggle while or do stand up? You're in Austin, Alex. Maybe you can do a little stand up while I pull up the next question.
My brother, I'm not even kidding. My brother is actually a stand-up comedian for a living.
Oh, really?
That's what he does.
That's awesome. Okay, I found the question here. I'm probably going to mispronounce your name, Sushanda, I think it is. The question is, do you prefer to include a unsubscribe link versus saying, if you don't want to hear from me, reply, no, thank you?
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Okay,
So,
fire away.
We've tested a lot. From what I've seen, actually, the link with newsletters that's the way to do it with newsletters. But when it comes to outbound email and you're trying to prospect, the no thank you for multiple different reasons can really increase your sender reputation. The reason why is because, one, whether it's an unsubscribe link or any other link, it's a link. And having a link in an email, whether it's an open tracking pixel, a click tracking pixel, an unsubscribe link, a link to a resource, anything like that, the way the ESPs actually see it is they think of it as a sign of potential phishing. So it can become suspicious. So I would avoid using a link for outbound emails. Now, the reason I would put an opt-out like no thank you or something like that is because it also increases your sender reputation. So people replying to your emails, whether it's no thank you, whether it's a catchphrase that you have, it's an opt-out message, something like that, it's showing ESPs that people are replying and actually replying to your emails, which helps your sender reputation. So whether you're getting opt-outs or positive emails in return, regardless, you're enhancing your sender reputation and you're not going to get flagged for phishing.
Sneaky, it makes sense. I hate it from the experience standpoint of receiving those emails and having to respond, but I do understand the logic of it. Yeah,
totally.
So Alex is right. I would just add, for marketing, you got to be careful legally. Like in most interpretations of most compliance laws, you cannot require someone to reply to unsubscribe. So in that case, of course, work with your legal group or person, or look at where you're emailing to and look at that compliance and the laws there. But that's why you typically see an unsubscribe link in a marketing email, because it has to be easy to unsubscribe, and easy usually doesn't fall within you have to respond to someone.
I'm not even sure if it's possible to not have an unsubscribe in HubSpot. You have to have an address.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right? And I think even if you're setting a basic, and you have to have an unsubscribe, right?
Yeah. HubSpot, I will say this, and Sarah, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I will say HubSpot is designed for marketing emails. It's not designed for outbound email. People are using it for outbound email, should be using a different tool.
Yep.
And I'm a HubSpot partner, and I'm still telling you that. I love HubSpot.
I totally agree.
But
also, I think sometimes we run into this distinction: an outbound versus a marketing email. A marketing email doesn't have to be like a heavy HTML, heavy design email. You can send plain text emails in HubSpot. Just send it to your opted-in list, right? If you're uploading a new list that is not opted in and you're going to send a mass email, that's where you're going to run into some issues with deliverability. But I think, again, just sometimes get that distinction. You can send a newsletter, can be plain text if you really want it to be. Follow-up email, you can ask for a reply. We do it all the time in our HubSpot emails. We ask people to reply for that very reason of improving our sender score. And that's a legitimate way of using it. We just don't send it to people outbound. We send it to people that have opted in.
Yep, you're spot on.
Cool. All right, next one. We're going to get into some bots. So from Alina, how do you deal with security bots? And I've been seeing this more and more, especially in HubSpot. How do you deal with security bots opening and clicking emails? I know, for instance, HubSpot has a little open rate calculator, how much the open rate with bots and minus bots. I have no idea the logic behind how they do that. But it seems to be something that's happening more, and I imagine it's only going to become a bigger part of every email marketer's, thinking and headspace is bots reading emails and stuff for them. So how do you deal with this issue? That's the number one reason.
Yeah, well, that's why we don't track opens and clicks, because it's going to happen no matter what, right? If you're sending to an enterprise that uses spam filters, it's going to show up. If you're sending, and there's so many different ways bots can show up on clicks and opens, which is why we don't track it and why I don't think it's a good indicator anymore of deliverability or the quality of your campaign. And that's why we switch completely to replies. Positive replies is the only metric that we actually track. And we also track reply to opportunity.
I would say a lot of the platforms now are trying to address this. Like they're trying to have their own little algorithms to pick up IP addresses or different like bots that are out there. I would say in addition to that, just look for any kind of trends. Like if you see, I like to go into my database and see if someone is opening every single email, but they're never clicking through, never responding, and their email address looks a little funky. Usually that is some kind of like honeypot or a security bot. So just look for unusual behavior like that.
And it's a shame too, because I remember when I was in enterprise sales, I was selling to like the biggest corporations in the world. So it was low velocity, but super high ACV deals. And there was this one guy who clicked 97 times on one of my emails. I was like, no way. Of course, that's a bot. You can click 97 times. But then I get an email from someone that works for him because he was like in the C-suite at a Fortune 500 company. So I was like, of course, it's fake. Someone in the C-suite of a Fortune 500 company. It's not going to click 97 times. But I get an email. I said, so-and-so requested that I reach out to you to talk about tax compliance software. And I was like, really? I was like, how did you get my information? He goes, well, he's been reading your email and sending it to us for the last month. And I was like, oh, so he did click 97 times, but you can't do that anymore. It doesn't work anymore. That was about 3 years ago at this point.
He's been saying the same email multiple times, telling the team he's a C-suite and he's telling his team to look at it. You got to send it that many times.
It was tax compliance, and he was worried about a mandate that was coming down in a particular country that they operate in. And he was like, guys, how are we going to fix this? Guys, what are we going to do? Guys.
Yeah. Come on, team, get moving.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't work anymore.
How you can see the inner workings of the team. Yeah. Those are the good old days. Exactly. We will probably not live in those times again. All right. Next question is from Stacy. Any tips to get around company firewalls to get my emails delivered?
Sarah, you want me to go first, or you want to go first?
Don't spam people.
Yeah. Don't spam
like
people.
Most IT groups, at least in my experience, Alex, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this and your experience, but most of them will take the approach of like looking for spam terms and like weird phishing behavior. And then otherwise, they're not going to add you to their spam list unless someone requests it. So my biggest advice is just to try to avoid really irritating people. So that's where a lot of these other pieces come in, right? Like make it easy to unsubscribe.
Yeah.
Make sure that your message is not offensive, that you're not over messaging people, keep an eye on those metrics. If you start to see someone mark you as spam at a company and then you start to see other people, then it's only a matter of time before people start running into IT and being like, hey, get this company on our block list.
Can I actually jump in, Alex, before you answer and just ask a really simple, stupid question, but I think it's actually really important to define. What is spam?
Like, what would you consider spam?
An email with very little value.
Both said don't spam people as your first reaction. So I just I think it actually is relevant to the audience to kind of define it a little bit, because I think we all almost at this point have our own little definitions of what's spam and what's not. And I would love to hear from both of you how you define spam.
In my opinion, if you're reaching out to a company that has 5,000 plus employees and you reached out to 100 different employees and sent the exact same message, and that message never contained any value in the first place, that's spam.
Yeah.
And they're not opted in. Yeah.
Correct.
If I had to put it in a sentence, it's like not relevant, not valuable, over communicated.
Okay.
I love that. It's a great definition.
Yeah. Alex gave the example. You gave the definition in that with your answer. That's kind of perfect. Alex, I cut you off. What were you going to say in response to this question about?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
I threw you off. Sorry. Actually, it's not about bots. It's about company firewall. Okay, cool. Moving on.
I would say, actually, one other piece I'd have on the firewall, you can include a section, like, for example, say if you're running a newsletter, like for my newsletter, when people subscribe, I have an auto send that's like, hey, if you want to make sure you get these emails, reply and, whitelist me in your thing. So that makes people self-aware of like, okay, if I want to get these, I need to make sure that I'm setting myself up to get these emails. And if I see it marked as spam, I want to get it out of the spam folder and things like that. So I find that can be helpful too.
All right, I'm trying to pull up the next question. I keep losing it. All right, here we go. Let's talk subdomains. So subdomain or secondary domains, which do you prefer for email campaigns, and how many emails per domain should we create? It's like a riddle.
I'm a big believer in secondary versus subdomains because subdomains are tied back to your primary domain. So secondary domains, meaning they have no association with your primary domain, is always the way to go. You can do some variation of, we'll use exit5. So instead of exit5.com, it'd be tryexit5.com, getexit5.com, something like that. We also recommend no more than 3 inboxes per domain. The reason for that, there's not like a rhyme and reason on the actual number, but the reason is to diversify. So if you have 100 inboxes associated with one domain and they're each sending 15 emails a day or something like that, and that domain develops a bad reputation, all 100 of those inboxes are now in jeopardy. Versus if you're spreading out the volume across multiple different domains and inboxes, you're increasing the longevity of your campaigns and deliverability because you're diversifying across those alternative domains versus just having all your eggs in one basket again. The name of the scam really is don't put all your eggs in one basket.
When you say inbox, Alex, do you mean like Dan at exit5.com, Dave at exit5.com? Like those are 2 different inboxes?
Yep, exactly.
And then what about if we use now I'm just getting my own personal advice here from Alex. Sorry, but hopefully this is relevant for everyone. What if we use something like, we always send our emails hi at exit5.com. It's a group, right? And all of our inboxes are attached to it. We all receive as a team those responses, and then we can actually, we do a lot of replies, a lot of conversations that way. Is that a no-no in your book, or is that a 3rd inbox?
It depends. It depends what you're trying to do, right? So if you're emailing on behalf of a sales rep or an SDR or something like that, I would always recommend using their actual name or some variation of the name. So if people wanted to look them up on LinkedIn, they could.
Yeah.
That's also why I don't recommend using fake aliases on LinkedIn, email, anything like that. You should be using real people.
Yeah.
But for marketing, what you're doing is totally fine.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. I feel better now.
Yeah, Sarah, I don't know. What's your take?
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I would just add, as long as you are operating in good faith, that advice will work. If you tank, you're like one domain and you think you can just move to another, it's still tied to your business and they will pick up on that, especially if you're a repeat abuser. So just keep that in mind. I agree with your statement about, it's like you want to have the multiple domains to work off of, but just please no one use that as an excuse to be like, oh, I'm just going to send a bunch of junk out of one and then switch to the other, because that will not work long term.
Yeah. 100%. For us, 100% of our list, if we're emailing you opted in on a form on our website to get it. So good to know from a best practice standpoint. All right, next question is from Brian. We're pretty link heavy in everything we send. What are good alternatives since that may affect deliverability? So there's too many links. I know images definitely, but does too many links affect deliverability? I'm going to guess yes. And then what would be some good alternatives for Brian if he's really link heavy today with his emails?
So the answer is yes, it's absolutely going to affect your deliverability. We've ran a ton of, we run a test on this honestly every single quarter because we're always hoping that one day links will be okay to send. And that way we can have way more effective email ones in an email campaign. With that said, as of right now, it's still a big no-no. So something that you can do to fix that is you can tease whatever resource you want to send in that email. So does it make sense if I send over this guide? Does it make sense if I send over my calendar link? Does it make sense, something like that? And you get the reply, which is good for deliverability. And then you can also still get the exact same concept. The other thing I'll say, which isn't related to this webinar, is you can use LinkedIn instead and send whatever links you want. With LinkedIn, you have 100% inbox rate. So,
yep. True.
Yeah, I would agree. I think marketing is a little trickier. I do what I like that I'm seeing more and more is the intersection of sales and marketing. So I like to run experiments like that. Like, hey, if I, not for a newsletter, like someone asked about a newsletter, I think that would be hard because you tend to link out to a lot. So I wouldn't want someone to respond for each link. But if it is a shorter email, I like to try stuff like that. And I've seen some success with that. Newsletters, I would say the biggest thing there is to just have a really valuable newsletter. because I do think that having a high open rate, high like people interacting with that email and reading through it thoroughly, and even in a lot of cases responding because they enjoyed it and they want to continue the conversation, that can help work against some of the negative points for the links.
Okay. In our example, I'll just use it to hopefully draw an answer that's relevant to everybody. We have a section for jobs. And so we have a job board. And right now we link to maybe just in that section alone, maybe 8 to 12 jobs. So would your recommendation, Alex or Sarah, be for us if we said, hey, we want to increase our deliverability, we want to make an effort here? Maybe the suggestion would be we'd list the jobs with a quick explanation of what they are, the title, location. Hey, click here to check out our job board. And it's one link that goes to our job board and lists out those jobs that you can explore versus an individual link to each individual job listing, right?
I'll defer to Sarah on this one, but to be honest with you, that sounds like the right move to me, is list them out in text and then have one master link. Also, these are all opt-in people, right?
Yep, they are.
Yeah, so that's going to help a ton. It's going to make a huge difference if they're all opt-in.
On a technical basis, yes. But I feel like I'm a broken record on just don't focus on just one metric though. If you do that and then the ESPs like it, but then you piss off your audience and they start to unsubscribe, well, then you defeated the whole purpose. So look across all the metrics. If you make a change, see how people interact with that. If they don't mind, then it's a win. If they do mind, then it's like, what's the point?
Yep. Yeah, I think if we went to test that, it would be incremental improvement, very, very, very small impact probably in our case. But okay, hopefully that helps everyone else too. Let's jump to the next question. It's like a step away from email deliverability, but I think this hopefully is so relevant because it's is about asking about replies. But what are B2B sales list email strategies to get more responses? Alex, we'll start with you because I know you talked about this is like the key metric that you're using to measure performance. What are some maybe basic overview ideas on asking for replies?
Extreme granularity and segmentation is critical. So you need to be sending relevant emails to the right people. Don't send a general message to 7 different personas and expect a great response. It's not going to work. And then also you need to really be validating and cleaning those lists. So not only checking for valid email addresses, but if they're catch-alls, also validating for those as well. There's a handful of tools you can use out there. We personally use a waterfall and clay with Lead Magic, Find Email, Prospeo, ICPs, and then we validate every single thing, whether it's catch-all or not, with Bounce Ban. So we're double validating every single thing to make sure before we ever add it to an email sequence. But we're also segmenting and personalizing based on relevance.
Is there any strategies that you would suggest for getting more responses?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with a lot of that. It's another area where I treat sales differently than marketing, and I'm glad this person specified.
Yeah.
Because in marketing, you'd want to be careful in the marketing automation platforms about, like Alex mentions, send almost one-to-one emails. But the way that the marketing automation platform will measure that is if you try to send a one-to-one email and it bounces, well, it's 100% bounce rate, and then it'll get upset about it. So this is where the tool that you're using matters. I know someone was asking earlier, what about HubSpot for sales emails? That's another reason why you might look at the tool and make sure that it's the most appropriate tool and best positioned to get you that deliverability, to get you the responses.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Let me unpin this one. The next one I wanted to pull up is who is going to do the stand up for us while I pull up the.
I think Sarah.
Alex, you call your brother real.
No, I think Sarah mentioned she has some jokes.
I'm getting distracted talking about this, but I'm still struggling to find the question. I had a good one I was excited about. Okay, here we go. This one is from Taryn, I think it's Taryn. Best strategies to re-engage contacts that were not being sent emails due to low engagement. What is your best strategy, I guess, to, in this case, warm these low engaged contacts back up?
When you say not being sent emails, do you mean not receiving, or that you're avoiding sending them emails? I see Taryn in the chat, so maybe they can respond.
Yeah.
Because the answer might vary depending upon that.
What do you got, Taryn? Not sending.
I would say you could have sales send a one-to-one email to, number one, because then you can send a more personalized one-to-one email. You don't have some of those downsides you have within the marketing automation platform. And I would send them a high value asset in that email too, and see if you can then get them to, like, say if it's like, a high value report that has a marketing form, then they'll go check out that report, they'll fill it out, and then hopefully that either they can update their email address or update their information, or they just start to be marked as re-engaged. They aren't stale. That would be one of my first approaches. What do you think, Alex?
This is a tricky one.
Mhm.
Honestly, I don't have a great response. I'll stick with your response. I just don't really understand the question that well, to be honest with you.
I'm going to guess, and I probably shouldn't just guess, but I know, like, for instance, like a lot of tools like HubSpot, you can decide not to engage not to email low engage. It's just a checkbox. And so I'm going to guess Taryn might be not sending those people who have low engagement, using that setting for her more recent newsletters or something. And now it's like, well, there's 10,000 people here. Like, what should I do? And should I, reject that? But Taryn, feel free to chat in and give us a little more context, and maybe we can circle back to it and try to give you a more comprehensive answer. Although, not take away from Sarah's answer. Yeah.
I think it depends why. If it's that the content isn't resonating, then I would say change your content or get them on a different, list. It depends.
Okay. Next question from Max. Again, I do think this fits in the bucket. It's one step removed from deliverability, but it does matter. A/B testing. So what are some starting points to find stronger results in subject line A/B testing? Sarah, let me ask you first. Is there a threshold to how many contacts that you should have before you actually get meaningful results, a critical mass that you need in your list to get meaningful results from subject line A/B testing?
Usually you want at least 30%. Even more so, I would like to at least have the email going to 1,000 people. Otherwise, I think it relies too much on personal preference. It's not a big enough sample. The biggest mistakes that I see in A/B testing that I would avoid would be, number one, A/B testing just to A/B test, and then there's no plan on what to do with the information, because that's just a waste of everyone's time. And it could actually impact your deliverability, because if you're A/B testing with bad subject lines, then it's like a percentage of your audience is consistently getting those. So always have a reason why you're doing it, and what do you do then with that information? And then also make sure that you have a large enough audience to actually statistically be meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100% on the number. The number that we actually use as a rule within our agency is 500 people minimum in a test. So if there's not a minimum of 500 people, you don't know what you're actually testing. You could just have some outliers in there that like a certain work better than others. So I agree with you on that number. In terms of a good place to start, what we typically do is something relevant in the subject line, and also something about the reason that we're actually reaching out. Usually no more than 3 or 4 words.
Okay. 3 or 4 words. That's your max.
Very short.
For a subject line. Very short.
Very
capital letters, no capital letters. Any tricks like that?
We don't do any capitals. The whole point, what you want it to look like, that I don't remember who said this, but I'm gonna say it on air right now that I did not say this. This is not my original thinking here. But someone said that when you're sending an outbound email, it should look like a conversation that's happening internally within your company, and that's going to get people to read it the most. And we've lived by that, and it's worked really well. Like I said, I don't remember who exactly said that. I wish I could give credit to somebody here, but we use that, and it works really well.
But don't send a meeting invite though. I have to give that a
Don't
shout
send
out.
a meeting
That was
invite.
a
No
highly
read.
annoying practice.
Yeah. No FWD or REs in the subject line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So like, for example, if you're selling a tool that tracks forecasting for a company or something like that, some sort of SaaS product that helps with forecasting, you could say like quarterly earnings and then the name of the company or the name of the person, something like that.
Yeah, I've kind of seen it as a trend. If you think about it from that lens, like people writing subject lines and definitely emails I pay attention to. Exactly. I also we're a little bit off topic, but this is probably hopefully relevant to everybody still. I also like when you write your email, your marketing email or outbound, write it as if you're just emailing a friend, right? And explain what you want to explain to them. Like you're just pick a friend and write, literally you can put their name like Dear Allison, right? And then you just, or hey Allison, you probably wouldn't say Dear Allison, right? Here's a good example of of how your copy changes. That's another way of a little trick to help you write really good copy in your emails.
Yep.
I think that's going to become more and more important too, especially the more that people use AI to write content, the more repetitive and kind of like inflexible that it's going to come across. So the more casual within reason that you can be, like the more conversational, the better it's going to stand out.
For sure. All right, question from Peter. Let's see if we can answer this one. With the move to permission-based email marketing, I think that means opted-in email list. I'm not totally sure, but that'd be my guess. How would you approach building a new audience from scratch, a new list of contacts? And obviously, I think we're thinking about how do we build a list that we can send and deliver to regularly and have high deliverability.
I personally feel like that list should come from another source outside of outbound, right? Probably some sort of marketing campaign. Maybe it's with paid ads, maybe it's with events, something like that to build that list of opt-in people. And then you should be reaching out to them via email. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the mark here. Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, like, I think a lot of people think about how do I build a list? And instead, I would recommend start with what kind of content do I want to put out there? And why is it valuable to my target audience? And then in my experience, the people will come. Like if you put content out there that's good, especially with marketing audiences, they love to share with each other and be like, oh, I found this awesome newsletter. You can get a lot of kind of more organic referrals and continue to build that list. But if you can, like, for example, you could put paid ads out there and you can get someone to sign up. But then if your content is not good, they're going to unsubscribe or be unengaged. So I'd focus on the content first. And then, like Alex mentioned, once you get that kind of keyed in, then you can put some like paid ad spend behind it, social ad spend, and get people to that page and aware of it.
I'm gonna chime in on this one because I definitely have thoughts for Peter. Everything you both said, I would just take it one step further and build it out a little formula for you. I would start with the one key offer. I think if you feel like it's a good enough offer that you can gate and get people in, I would focus on go interview your customers, figure out what they care about, what they want to know. I'll give you an example for us. We launched our B2B salaries report. So we actually have a huge audience. We're able to get a bunch of people to respond with salary data and information. We did analysis. We had 1,200 people respond analysis of like what they actually like benchmarking, different titles, roles. That report became like a 30-page PDF for the breakdown of locations and everything. Like what is your, like that's a great offer for our audience. We're putting LinkedIn ads behind that. We put a gate up. We asked for some information to provide that to people. And then we have a welcome sequence from that of people that are coming in. We welcome them in and we kind of introduce them to our newsletter. And like, that's the right way. I know it's not like a 2025 AI take. It's probably like a 15-year-old strategy, but like it still works. And it works really, really well, especially if you have a good brand, people trust you. So that's the way I would probably do it. And sorry for jumping in here. I'm not supposed to be the expert today, but I wanted to answer this one because I just feel like
that's good advice.
Works, so cool. Sorry. All right. I'm going to shut up and bring this one back to both of you. So this one's from Michael. The question is, after how many unopened emails would you consider a lead to be disengaged or uninterested, particularly for campaigns sending it to a group of 2,000 cold leads? This one has Alex written all over it. I am trying to reduce the amount of dead leads I am chasing, which might harm my sender reputation. This one is teed up for you, Alex. What do you got for us on this one?
We will never send an email sequence that's over 3 emails ever. And the reason for that is, one, you can reach more contacts if you're sending less volume to each individual prospect because you can send more prospects because you're limited on the amount of emails that each inbox can actually send, not the amount of contacts. So that's number one there. But two, also, if you send someone 3 emails and they haven't responded to you, what makes you think they're going to respond to the 4th or the 5th? What they're probably going to do is mark it as spam and say, stop messaging me, stop emailing me, you're pissing me off. So that's my answer.
Yep. I always respond on the 3rd email. Sorry, not interested or no.
Yeah, exactly. 3 is enough.
Yep. Sarah, do you anything to add to this one?
It's funny, the number 3 came to my mind as well. And I'm like, was there some kind of like, why is 3 the magical number? I don't know. I don't remember why that is.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it's just an experience. It's just if they haven't opened by the 3rd email, chances are they aren't going to.
And I think actually, if I could just add to this question, flip it a little bit. So I'm with you, and I hear you on the cold outbound side. Sarah, how many emails should? Because I actually recently got educated. We just hired someone to come in and help us with some of our email automation. how many emails do you think should be like in a welcome sequence? So now we're talking about the opted-in side. For instance, maybe the example I gave, people opted in an offer and we want to get them, to take action. Is it 3? Is it more? Like where do you think is, I know it depends, but like what kind of guardrails would you give for like an opted-in welcome sequence?
I'm going to be really annoying and say as many as you can have valuable content for. What I see happen a lot is, especially in marketing, is people will be like, well, we need 5 emails because somewhere they said it should be 5 emails, but then they don't have the content behind it.
Yeah.
So then it's like you're just sending a half-hearted email. Again, I go back to what's the point? Because you could lose subscribers. Like once they unsubscribe, they're gone. So I would look at, okay, I'll start with how much content can I create before I launch this? And maybe you start with just one email and see how that goes, and then continue to build out like, oh, they love this email, they'd probably love this other content offer too, and then build that in later. I would again focus on like the subscriber experience more than the like a random number to hit.
Yeah, some metric that someone somewhere on a webinar said, Sarah said 5 emails. We got to add 5 emails. But what if the third, fourth, and fifth email is just useless and then it doesn't help in any way? Yeah, cool. Let me unpin this one. Let me just jump back into the chat. I know people, I haven't been keeping as good of an eye. I know Alice and Anna are in there. We have time for maybe like 2 more questions. I'm going to jump back into the Q&A panel and just pull out a few things that might make sense. The questions have been great. This has been awesome. I know I probably owe Alex and Sarah, like they're probably going to invoice me after this. Just go through some of the value that I've gotten so far from here.
The last Exit 5,
let's go.
The last Exit 5 webinar I did, I got a box of macaroons, and that was great.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Wait, from us?
Yeah, from you guys.
It's probably Allison or Anna who are on backstage here that made that happen, but that's awesome. Cool. All right. This question's from Martin. For a new company, how concerned should we be about domain health? We were given advice to warm up our domain and not send more than a few hundred emails a day. But how do you start increasing so we don't have roadblocks of batch sending in workflows?
Can I jump in here on this one?
Yes, please.
Go for it.
As a new company, do not send any cold emails from your primary domain. Only if you're doing very manual outreach and it's like 1 or 2 or maximum 5 people. Other than that, use your email just consistently over the next couple of years to reach out to customers, partners, employees, things like that to build your sender reputation. But if you're going to start cold emailing, definitely do not use your primary domain, especially as a new company. That's the quickest way you can get blocked forever. So, and to answer your question about how do you get past it, you have to set up alternative domains. Definitely don't send hundreds of emails on those domains either. Send, maybe 50 a day per domain and break it out between 3 inboxes. And that's going to be your best bet.
For marketing, if you look in my guide that I think Allison shared in the chat, it has like a little example schedule that you could follow. But I would say my blanket statement would be just start slow, see how your emails do, and continue to build out from there. Like usually you start with like 1,000 or 2, and you want to start with the emails that you feel the most confident will land. So we're talking very friendly customers or very friendly people who will get the email, who you feel will interact with the email. Don't just pick like a random old list from somewhere or any kind of cold list. And then usually you kind of double and triple over time. But I would say do not rush it. Like Alex said, don't use your main domain, and then also do not rush it because it's hard. It'll take you much more time to undo, in my experience, than to just do it the right way.
Awesome. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and show this guide that Sarah put together and is ungated. She built it in Notion. We've shared the link in chat, so hopefully you saw that from Allison. It's pinned at the top of the chat. But she just referenced this warm-up schedule, which I believe, Sarah, I think it's the next section now. Yep, here it is right here. Yep. So this is, Sarah, where you're talking about the warm-up schedule week by week with volume, a description of the audience, and some additional notes to help you gear up. So this is in the chat. You can go take this and steal this. I forgot who, I think it was Michael, I might have asked the last question. You can take this and go use this. This is Sarah's recommendation for how to warm up your email.
Yeah, and it depends on your database too. Like this is the best kind of blanket thing I could come up with. If you, because some people might look at this and say, my entire database is like 10 million. That's going to take forever. So I would say look at this, and it's the spirit of it. Start with like the most engaged, smaller audience. Continue to expand, and then work your way out to the more like kind of older records. That's the spirit of this, and the calculations within it may change depending upon your audience.
Yeah, you could just feed this screenshot to ChatGPT and say, hey, this is for a list of maybe 16,000. Like, how would this work for my list of 1 million or 300,000 or whatever? And they probably help you break down the ratios the way Sarah laid it out here. Cool. Feel free to check out this. Again, this is this pretty robust guide. Sarah, thanks for putting this together for everybody. I remember when you posted this on LinkedIn, it went kind of viral. This is a great, detailed guide of everything email deliverability, and you should go and check this out. A great thing to have. All right, we are basically at time. We tried to answer as many questions as we could. I know there's still more to answer. Feel free to check out Alex or Sarah on LinkedIn. I think they both shared their LinkedIn URL, or Sarah did. Alex, if you have your LinkedIn, if you want to throw it in chat, just so people know. Is that the best place for people to contact you, Alex?
I'm on mute. Definitely. I am.
Yeah.
I have 3 screens I work from. One is LinkedIn. The other 2 are work. So my LinkedIn is always up. So
how many emails have you sent while on this webinar?
I don't know. I'd have to check. I don't know. We have 35 active clients right now. So I don't know. Could be thousands.
Yeah, great. Cam, thanks for the shout out there. Hey, before we hop off real quick, could everybody just do me a favor and just chat in, scale from 1 to 5, how valuable you thought today's webinar was, 5 being amazing, great, perfect, 1 being complete waste of your time. And I don't know why I'm here 59 minutes in. Does not look like that's the case for many people. A lot of 4s and 5s. That's super helpful.
We got an 8.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I saw 8 in there.
Nice. That's awesome. And thanks everyone who stuck around for the whole time. It's awesome. We try to make these as interactive and answer as many of your questions as possible. So I'm really glad we were able to get to many of them. Check out Sarah's guide. Check out Sarah on LinkedIn. Check out Alex. He doesn't have a very complicated name to search on LinkedIn, so you'll be able to find him there, or his link we can pop into the chat. We'll send the recording out after this, so you have that. And thank you to our sponsor, NAC, who sponsored today's session on email deliverability. Sarah, Alex, thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
So, bye, everyone. Have a great day.